Hi, this is Trevor Coppola for Anthony J. Hilder and for Alex Jones and whoever else will be listening. I have Doug Millar.
Hi, Trevor. Appreciate you having a chance to learn some new things that you've probably never heard about before.
We're happy to have you here. What would you like to talk about today?
Well, I'd like to start out by saying that I've been a full-time investigator of violent crimes against children covered up by law enforcement for the last 21 years in over 20 states. I've never charged my investigations over this period of time, so it's been a pretty lean, meager lifestyle. But I learned what was going on in Sonoma County. That's about an hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge. Santa Rosa is there. It's the largest city between San Francisco and Portland, Oregon, on the coast. And I moved there in '82, and 10 years later, I found out there were children being brought to our county, tortured or murdered there on film. And I was creating snuff films, snuffing lives. I was so horrified by it, I left the business world the next day. And I told everybody I was a co-founder of 3 high-tech companies, which meant I got stock and stock options, no money for 6 years, so I didn't have a savings account. When I realized what was going on, I realized I'd been shown the Achilles heel of the New World Order, and I couldn't go back to work the next day because ever since I got the LP records that Anthony Hilder sold and was the producer of, called Illuminati by Myron Fagan, LP records like this with a cover photograph of the Council on Foreign Relations headquarters in Washington, D.C., in New York City. And Myron Fagan, 1967.
Wow.
And Myron Fagan, a Jewish playwright, very successful in New York City and also in Hollywood, teamed up with Anthony down there in the Hollywood area, and they produced these awesome, amazing reports on record. And I happened to get one the first year, and so I started studying the Illuminati in '67, and I've never stopped.
Wow.
And what was so fascinating was that Fagan said that the Council on Foreign Relations is the Illuminati's branch that runs America as our secret government, and there's no question about it. I mean, it's so sad that even the John Birch Society refuses to acknowledge the Illuminati exists today. Why? Because I was a Bircher for 16 years. It's controlled opposition. Now, look at this. I'd like to ask everybody, show them this photograph, male or female. I've asked over 1,000 people in trade shows and gun shows and all across America. Over 80% say that's a female. Well, obviously it's a trick question.
Female.
Right. This is
So I was correct.
this is Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, Aquino.
Transsexual.
Well, he's much worse than that. And so I'll get into that a little bit, but he's the expert that does MK Ultra torture and mind control. He likes to sexually abuse, torture, and murder children on film. And the police in San Francisco raided his home with a search warrant and found his home videos. And his home videos, of course, was him torturing and murdering children. They had all the evidence against him, but because he's a CIA officer, they couldn't arrest him. They had to notify the FBI. And the FBI came in, told the chief of police, destroy all records on Aquino. This is in '87. Why? Because this involves national security. And it was okay for CIA officers to go around torturing and murdering children, and even worse things than just torture and murder. But, it's hard to believe there's anything worse, but won't cover that today. Now, here is a photograph. This CD came out 6 months before 9/11 happened. You see the red star, the coup, and there was the coup pulling a communist takeover of America, and you can see the 2 towers are being blown up just the way that we saw them on live TV being blown up. How did these people know 6 months in advance what was going to happen? And of course, these people, although they're part of the coup, they certainly did not know. I'll turn this ringer off.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tom. Oh, Mike, this
And
is
This looks like it forms a pyramid. Those drumsticks there, maybe,
Well, it could be, but basically, what they're orchestrating what's going to happen.
or they're pointing to.
They're, and we say we are orchestrating what's behind us. And what is so significant is when you turn it sideways, see him pointing at this. What does it say there? Covert labs. In other words, covert subversion of our country using, and I kept looking at this, I thought, how could they know 6 months in advance? Well, if you look at on the internet, you also, and type in the money designs on the money, our money regarding 9/11. You'll see, if you put all the numbers together, you've seen those folders? Everybody should go to the internet and check it out so they see for themselves that came out a year or two before 9/11 happened. They were bragging about what they do. And that's what's so amazing. They put out movies, they put out all these documentaries because the Illuminati brags about it, because who controls our media? The Council on Foreign Relations in America. They say if you want to see the truth about America, you have to go overseas to read the newspapers and watch television overseas. That's how much the Council on Foreign Relations controls our media. Now, I kept looking at this weird name. Look at how fancy the artwork is. Party music. Okay, and I look at it sideways, upside down, and eventually I figured it out. Earth waste. Wasting the earth. Or waste the earth. In other words, they're using minorities as their guinea pigs for the Illuminati to conquer America. Because why are they coming after America? We're the only country in the world other than Switzerland, which is insignificant, as far they have our guns. Right. And we have many more guns than we even have adults in America. So they can't figure out how to conquer us. They control our media, they control our government, they control our entire country, the Federal Reserve, but they can't control our guns.
Right.
So prayer and guns are the only two things we still got going for us. And our veterans, because they know what's coming down and they're preparing for it. Their children, their grandchildren are preparing for it. And so we go from there to this. Just a matter of a few days after Polly Klaas's body was found, U.S. News and World Report had this story. Came out on December 27th, and is talking about the Finders, a CIA front involved in sexually abusing, torturing, and murdering children and shipping them overseas. And the fact is, they're involved in Satanism. It's all here in one page. I never saw it. I never found another person but a buddy of mine that found this article in his, because he subscribed to U.S. News, as I did for decades, but I wasn't at this time, and it shocked me. I couldn't believe that they had such an amazing story. And so here is the Finders. What happened to them? Oh, right here. Looking too deep. This is a report that Ted Gunderson put together on the Finders after this report came out. I was the one that gave him this story because no one else had ever shown it to me, and he didn't know about it. And so what is so fascinating is he put in something he gave me back in 1992 when he spoke in Santa Rosa at a black church, Southern Baptist Church. It was the first black church in America to be accepted by the Southern Baptist Convention nationwide. And look at here, Reader's Digest, July 1982, exposing the fact that 100,000 children disappear every year and never call home again. Here it was in Reader's Digest, but how many people, this should be headlines in our papers every year. Not 30 years ago, but not headlines in our papers. Why? Because Gunderson told me before he died that now it's 200,000 a year disappearing. So in a 30-year period, it doubled, and what we don't read about it. It's just unbelievable. Now, so a month after Polly Klaas's body was found, this story came out. Cover story in U.S. News and World Report, January 24th, 1994. Now, what's so significant is, I highlighted it here, but the most important thing is right here, mind control. Now, why would U.S. News and World Report be exposing the CIA involvement in child sex slavery in America, and also in mind control. Every page of this report. Where did it start? It just happened to be whoops, right here. Okay, the, I apologize. This is not a complete report. Okay, the bottom line is every page exposes the CIA's involvement in torture laboratories in America. Every page. Okay, and I give you this background because it was Bill Colby, the former head of the CIA, that went to Janet Reno and said, okay, polyclass's body has been found. We need to get the truth out about polyclass. And he was the one that convinced her to go to the media and get this story, these two stories out.
And then William Colby went for a canoe ride while he was eating breakfast and
Right.
was never seen again.
Exactly. Now, Bill Colby, when I read the book, The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska by John DeCamp, who was CIA in the Vietnam War, not by choice. They told him he was going in there to serve the CIA. What was shocking was the fact that Bill Colby was his mentor for 25 years before he was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered. And I'll give you a background on that. But what was so amazing was that Colby was the one that inspired DeCamp to write the book. He said, you know too much about what's going on with these children in Nebraska and Washington, D.C., and all these different crimes. He said that you've got to write a book to protect your wife's life, your life, but also your children. Because if you write a book, that will be your life insurance. If you don't write the book, then they will get rid of you to make sure all of the things you know die with you. And so that's why DeCamp wrote the book. Now, this is a very interesting cover. This is an 8.5 by 11 report, 160 plus pages, and I'll read it to you here. Project MK Ultra, the CIA's program of research in behavioral modification, put out by the United States Senate Intelligence Committee, exposing CIA experiments in America. MK Ultra. They say MK is for mind control in German. MK, all right? Now, so DeCamp exposed it in the Franklin cover-up. This exposes it. It talks about MK Ultra all through this report. Now, here is a very interesting cover I put together on a report. As you can see here, 13 of the Press Democrats and the New York Times worst child abuse, Satanism, and murder cover-ups in California, America, and Bohemian Grove. I live in Santa Rosa, that's Sonoma County. We live about an hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge on Highway 101, and in our county is Bohemian Grove. Now, if you don't know what Bohemian Grove is all about, go to YouTube and check it out. Alex Jones did a wonderful job of exposing it after I sent his close friend Tex Mars, M-A-R-R-S, our report that we got published about the fact that they have a 39-foot owl, concrete owl at Bohemian Grove. They do rituals there. They cremate a coffin, and they call it the cremation of care. Okay, most of the people there haven't got a clue what's going on, but the ones that run it are Druids. And I had a friend that was raised in the Illuminati, and she said, remember this, the Druids and the Illuminati are one and the same. So Bohemian Grove is run by the Druids, which means run by the Illuminati. And I just happened to move there. I had no idea what was going on. Now this book, Childhood is Should Not Hurt, by Dr. Claire Reeves. She's been a dear friend of mine for the last 19 plus years, and she's a co-founder of our group Unite for Justice. John DeCamp is a friend and a co-founder of Unite for Justice. Ted Gunnarsson was a co-founder of Unite for Justice. After we worked on these kind of crimes for 19 years, I called them all and said, you've all been doing this longer than I have. Are we going to keep beating our heads against the wall and getting bloody noses and we can't even recognize ourselves anymore now 19, 20 years later? Or are we going to do something different? So we all agreed we need to do something different, so I invited over 80 people. Dr. Stan Monteith right behind you there. He's a co-founder of Unite for Justice. And so most of the people are nationally prominent, and they lend their names, reputations, and risk their children's lives as well as their own to me to help get the word out. Just because I was there, I didn't know what was going on. It was just happened to be at the right place or the wrong place at the right time to learn what was going on. As you know, Ted Gunderson died 2 years ago of cancer on July 31st. Now, Aquino, that I showed you this photograph of a minute ago, in the mid-1980s, he put out a contract on Ted Gunderson for $35,000 to have him murdered. Ted had to go underground for 18 months. He worked for F. Lee Bailey, one of the most important, impressive criminal attorneys in America. And F. Lee Bailey, Ted would travel all over the nation, living out of hotels and motels, and on the run as he worked for Bailey so that they couldn't get him. Now, he had several attempts on his life during that 18 months, and it was obviously it was God that was protecting him. It was amazing. So the result was that after 18 months, he was able to get Aquino to pull the contract. He resurfaced, and F. Lee Bailey is quoted in Ted's resume as saying that Gunderson is the finest investigator I have worked with or have known in my life. Quite a compliment, you know? So the bottom line is that freedom's not free. We have to be willing to step up and tell the truth and expose what's going on. This book came out, of all things, 17 years ago, naming Polly Klaas's killer and proving it. 2 people were involved in naming this person and documenting it, and yet we can't get him arrested. Why not? I went to where she was murdered in Boulder City, Colorado, and I went there and talked to the city council on May Day last year, 2012. As some of you may know, May Day is the founding date of the Illuminati in 1776 in a Jesuit university, Ingolstadt in Bavaria. All right? Now, lots of the Jesuits have helped expose what's going on, but the ones that run the Jesuit order are heavily involved in the Illuminati, and all but 3 of those Jesuits actually joined the Illuminati before it was exposed 40 years later. It's still operating today, but as I say, the Bird Society will not expose that fact. Why? Because Masons run the John Bird Society's National Council. I called my friend, and then I went and met with him. He and I joined the Bird Society in 66 of all things in Anchorage, Alaska, the same night. And Larry Abraham signed us up. And so I ran a chapter for the Bird Society there for several years. I was asked to be the section leader and run most of the population of the state. But I was building a house at the time. I knew I didn't want to have the time. But I give you this background because I went to CR then on my 40th high school reunion in 1994. I went back to Alaska, and I went to Birch meetings again in his home and just renewing friendships and everything. I had a lot of dear friends in the Birch Society up there. And I went to CR Lewis, the national chairman, and I said, CR, I hate to tell you this, but have you ever been told that the National Council of the John Birch Society has Masons on the National Council? He said, what? No. I said, well, somebody in national headquarters told me this, risking his job and his life to expose this. And so he said, what should I do, Doug? I said, well, number one, you need to contact Bill Jasper, the senior editor for the New American Magazine, because he has hundreds of pages. He gave me a $150 check. At my cost, I made hundreds of pages for him documenting what's going on regarding mind control and everything. Now this talks about solutions. This is put out by Jack McLam last year in 2012, and he updated Vampire Killer 2000 with this, and in it he has lots of solutions. I don't have time to get into it right now, but Jack is also a co-founder of Unite for Justice. Now, John DeCamp told us that we need to uh, picket our enemies, put up big signs on posters on telephone poles, pass out thousands of flyers, picket the police department, the sheriff's department, the judges, and the everybody else out there that were covering up the torture and murders of children in Sonoma County. And eventually somebody's going to overreact and sue us. Well, I've been doing it for 21 years, and that never happened. But when I went after Aquino, that you saw, the transvestite, okay, one of the most evil people in the world, when Oprah and Geraldo had Aquino on their shows, and she was on. Oprah had him on in February the 17th, 1988. Geraldo had him on with the Gunderson exposing him in October, just before Halloween of '88. 800 of Aquino's victims came forward from 8 states and said, "That's the one that tortured me. That's the one that sodomized me. That's the one that mind controlled me." And I witnessed him do many human sacrifices. So here we had witnesses, and yet FBI came in every time and shut down the investigations, destroy all records. This involves national security. I've talked to 2 cops that in San Francisco after Polly Klaas was kidnapped, and we knew it was a retaliation for us exposing Aquino and this stuff in our county. And they said, our chief told us that because of what the FBI told them. So anyway, I want to show you this because here are written documents by 2 men who have seen Aquino do a human sacrifice at Bohemian Grove, risking their lives. They're victims of CI mind control, programming them to go out and commit crimes. As little children, they were raised this way, and they're risking not just their lives, they're risking their children, their nieces, their nephews, all their loved ones' lives to help stop what happened to them. Very brave men. So now we have 3 men living in 3 states who've never met each other, all saying the same thing about Aquino. Okay, and one of them, of course, is in the Franklin cover-up. So I can go on and on, but on the back here, October the 17th of last year, I wrote this report and gave it to the district attorney and the chief of police, the sheriff. And now, next week, I finally have an appointment with the sheriff in June. In other words, we're talking about 8 months later to get an appointment. But I would go to public meetings every time they're there. I'd tactfully remind them that I gave them a report, you have the evidence in your files, and now we want some justice. And I could have gone and hit him on the head with a baseball bat like I felt like doing, but I chose to use a different tactic, and it paid off. Now, he said, well, I called him out as you live in the Second Amendment event. Excuse me. I said, hey, Sheriff, I've been trying to get to with you for months. I said, how about us having breakfast or lunch? Let's get together and talk about this stuff. He said, I won't have lunch with you, but I will invite you to my office. I said, okay, who should I contact and what number? And so it took over 2 months of pestering, but eventually I got my appointment. Now, here's a victim of Aquino also. Her name it says Bryce Taylor, because this is her book. This is her life history. It's her autobiography. But her real name is Sue Ford, and after she didn't get whacked and they didn't hurt her children anymore because they're victims of CI mind control also, she's what's called a presidential model, like you met and talking about Kathy O'Brien, okay? Kathy O'Brien is still being used by the CIA. Yeah, they put all these people's names in the book, and that way people contact them, and Mark Phillips' job, according to this lady who spent $50,000 of her inheritance transporting them around for 18 months, and with them, she said, Doug, I said, so I know Mark Phillips. I was the first master of ceremony for Mark Phillips and Kathy O'Brien in America. Where? In Polly Klaas's hometown, 8 months before she was kidnapped. So we know what we're talking about. The bottom line is, I said, why is Mark Phillips doing this? Because I know what's going on. And she said, because his job is to find out what we know, what we're willing to expose, And in fact, I asked Mark Phillips in April of 1993, 2 months after they were in our county and speaking in our county. I called him several times and I said, Mark, I'm curious. When you do such a great job of deprogramming these CIA mind control victims, what do you do with your reports? So I give them to both sides. What? You give them to the CIA? He said, yes. I said, Mark, how can you justify risking their lives when they tell you stuff that they probably never told their therapist? No one in their lives. He said, Doug, I'm interested in staying alive. Okay? That's what it's all about. And as I'm still working with the CIA, I'm finding out who, so she told me, when he finds out what they know about Kissinger, he puts memory blocks back in the CIA victims. That's how high he is in the Illuminati, to protect him. That's his primary purpose. Okay, now, you're from Los Angeles. Right. Of all things,
Right.
In Las Vegas, just came in yesterday. From Las Vegas, I was there for 2 weeks. And I went to the library to use a computer. And I saw the stacks of the LA Times there, but you can see it's reprints. And this was on top of the stack. It was like it was meant for me. Discard. Okay, the date, January 22nd, this year, 2013. Mahoney tried to conceal abuse. That's, of course, Cardinal Mahoney, in charge of the largest archdiocese in America. Files from the 1980s show Archbishop and aide discussed strategies to protect priests. Think about that. No wonder he had 33 priest files, just a little occult numerology there, obviously, that he would not release for years. And he was sued and ordered by the judges, and he still wouldn't release these files. Okay? Appointed Archbishop in 1985, Roger Mahoney retired in 2011. He issued a statement of apology to abuse victims Monday. Now, I called Johnny Camp, that wrote the Family Cover-Up, and wrapped this up, and I said, John, do you have anything on Mahoney that's never made the papers? And this is, I'm talking about in 2006. And he said, yes, I do. I got a whole file a thick file on him. I said, no kidding. Leaving Sonoma County. I'm driving all day down to meet with some Catholics in near Hollywood who want to expose Mahoney because they know how evil he is. And if they were willing to pay your way out and rent a car for you, a place to stay so you didn't have any expenses, would you be willing to come out and speak with him? He said, of course I would. No charge. And so we set the whole thing up, and he got a phone call from 2020. And they said, we'd like to see what you have new. Well, they monitored Ted Gunderson's, mine, and Camp's phone number. We don't have any secrets, as you know. Every phone call in America is monitored through the system, right? Trigger words gets a live review. So the result is that 2020 flew into Omaha before DeCamp was able to get to L.A. And DeCamp set them up. They were so stupid because he already knew that they covered up on Johnny Gosch and everything, and it was already in Johnny Gosch's mother's book back in 1999. So this is something new now, and 7 years later. And DeCamp played a ruse with his secretary and said, I got to rush to court. Give these people the file on regarding Mahoney. She said, John, let me make a copy of it. You make a copy of it. He said, no, I don't have time. I'm late for court. Big hustle. He gave him all a hustle. And when he got back from court, the film crew was gone, and so was almost everything in his file. They stole almost all the contents because of what he had on Mahoney. And he got it from Catholic priests in Chicago. There are lots of good Catholic priests. We don't condemn the good priests. We just say that, hey, if you were sexually abused as a child, you might be a pervert. Just like if I was sexually abused as a child, I might be a pervert. We don't have control of what we become when that happens. And I've talked to the head of the FBI in Alaska. We went to the same church. And I was in his office. He said, Doug, I've studied pedophilia and perverts. There's nothing you can do. Their wires are crossed inside. You can castrate them. You can do everything to them, but they still will go out and hurt children because it's a power thing, because they couldn't control what happened to them. It's sad. So I just tell people, hey, we can't go around killing all the pedophiles in America, so let's make sure they never get a chance to access a child again. Let's come up with some solutions, you know what I'm saying? So that's what my book's all about. And so speaking of my book, this is a draft of the cover of my book. I'm taking off everything but this photograph right here. This photograph right here of these three boys, they're tied, their hands behind their back, their feet are bound, and they're gagged. This is Johnny Gosh, okay? This is his mother's book, Why Johnny Can't Come Home. Aquino paid $15,000 for his kidnap. And two people witnessed that, who come forward now and reported that we were there, and yes, Aquino paid $15,000 cash for Johnny. He was used as a child sex slave from 12 until 22, and went to his mother about 15 years after he was kidnapped and said, Mom, I can't stay. We're fearful for our lives for being here. We're fearful for your life. You can't even tell people what we're telling you, but the bottom line is that the only reason I'm alive today is because you kept going on television, kept going on talk shows and radio and television, nationwide, Congress and everything, and so people would come in and pay extra money to have sex with me, even though I wasn't a child anymore. And so, of all things, we were able to get a copy of a video, and we're going to give it free to everybody that gets this book, okay? Where Angels Fear to Tread, we're going to give a free documentary of one of Aquino's victims. I should say also, this text will all be out of here. Too much text on the front. On the back of the book, wanted, dead, or alive, or temporarily alive. This is a photograph of Aquino, and lots of information here. Don't have time to get into, but I'll have these endorsements on the book and everything. Here's the bottom line, folks. Freedom's not free. If you're not willing to protect other people's children and loved ones, then you don't deserve to live, as far as I'm concerned. We have to start thinking outside the box. And in Belgium in 1996, 300,000 people were in the streets on a Sunday. We can't even get 30 people in the streets in America to protect children. And that one of the reasons I believe is, number one is fluoride, number two, the programming from televisions, because we're all gung-ho for the Second Amendment and everything, but why aren't we protecting children? It's got to be subliminal programming that we're receiving, that we don't go out and do something. So I'm begging you to quit watching television and let's go out in the streets and take our country back nonviolently. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Doug. Good job.
Thank you, sir.
Wants to give out his information now. Okay.
Why don't you ask me?
Okay. Doug Millar, how can people get your information or get in contact with you or listen to your program?
Oh, thank you for asking, Trevor. First of all, I do a radio talk show 5 days a week. Best time on the 24-hour period. Pacific time is from 6 to 7 p.m., which means on the East Coast, it's all live from 9 to 10. So I get most people when they're off work. Now, you can go to the website, it's internet radio, it's www.crusaderadio.com. Up in the left-hand corner, it says Listen Live. You just click on that, and away we go. Now, with regard to how do you order my book, this is over 200 pages, and it's being released tomorrow at this conference. And when you figure it's 8.5 by 11, that's the equivalent to a book being over 400 pages. Price only $24, which means 6 cents a page. We're trying to keep the cost down. We want everybody to get copies of it, and we're going to offer wholesale by the case. We want, for example, Johnny Camp's book, The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska, when he did self-publishing. Normally, if you do a self-published book, you're excited to have a bestseller if you sell 50 books. He has sold over 500,000 books, never spent a dime on advertising. Shocking. That's got to be a record. Okay, so we'd like to duplicate that because we want to protect all children and we want to build a movement around Mothers Against Sexual Abuse. I've been asked to be the Northern California president for the organization. They've been operating as a nonprofit for the last 21 years. If anybody wants to donate to Mothers Against Sexual Abuse, it's tax deductible. Our mailing address we use for everything is 1570. That's 1570 North, spelled out, North Street, Suite number 8, Santa Rosa, 2 words, Santa Rosa, for St. Rose, California, 95404. Again, it's 95404. So you'll get this book, but remember I mentioned that you get a free DVD, one of a kind. It's a U.S. Army CID, yes, that's Criminal Investigation Division. Army CID detectives interviewing one of Aquino's victims, describing on this, it's a 1 hour or 4.5 hour interview, describing his torture and murders of children that she witnessed. And she's still alive, folks. Okay, and that's because we protect the people that we interview, the people that we work with, and we let them know that we'll retaliate 10 for 1. So the bottom line is that freedom's not free. Do your homework. Get this book. Buy it by the case wholesale. Give me a call. My number is 707-396-8215. I repeat, 707-396-8215. I hope to go on a national tour, and we'd love to have people call me, contact me, so we can schedule a tour, go to every city, major city in every state nationwide, and let's take our country back nonviolently. Thanks for the interview.